go. All right. Episode 25. We are back. The crew is back. We are back from a week off. Actually, a week off. We were a week on. We were at the Bitwise event, and we are cooking with gas now. Let me get this off the screen. We are broadcasting only from the MSTR True North channel. We are trying to focus all of the chat into one location. So hopefully everybody is now on the same page, on the same chat platform, and we can get it cooking. All right, we've got a fun one today. We're going to try to keep it to an hour. We've got a few things that we're working on. Obviously, we've got MSTR True North World coming up on Monday next week, which is going to be super exciting, a ton of fun, a part of the strategy world event. There's going to be a lot of excitement. Putting out some new content that we've never really talked about before, and releasing some information that we haven't talked about before. So it's going to be a really good time. So welcome to MSTR True North. For those that haven't been here before, this is a group of people that gets together. We talk about MSTR. We talk about Bitcoin treasuries. We talk about Bitcoin and capital and the future frontier of digital capital. This is a group of people that have been at the front of this trade for an incredibly long time and are heavily invested in MSTR and other Bitcoin proxies. And the goal is to talk about the cutting edge of what's going on in the market. So today we're going to talk about MSTR stat update. We're going to get into Strategy World and True North World, what's going on that front. We've got a recap on the Bitwise event last week, which was a ton of fun, very intimate event, small, and Saylor gave a kick-ass presentation, which I don't think is live yet. So we could talk about that a little bit. MSTR earnings is tomorrow. 'Twas the night before earnings. It's going to be an interesting one. I think there will be a lot of bewilderment, a lot of things to prepare for on that front. Maybe we'll get into 21, the new MSTR playbook that's coming to the scene, and we'll see where we go. So without further ado, maybe I'll kick it over to Tim for our not financial advice.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to hear tonight and this coming Monday, it may be amazing, but it's not financial advice. Back to you, Jeff.
Bingo. Exactly. None of this is financial advice, but we love talking about this stuff and we can't help ourselves. So we have to get on the microphone and chat about it. And the next most important and exciting topic is that we have a new chief investment officer on the team right below me, Ben Workman. Congratulations to Ben.
Appreciate it.
A long time coming. I know they're going to buy a ton of Bitcoin. That's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, it is going to be fun. And it was a long road. I mean, I've been working with Swan for about the last 6 months. I've been doing a lot of consulting work for them, getting to know the team. And, eventually it just came to the point where we were getting fully aligned on everything we wanted to do, right? One of the things that I always look for was if I was ever going back into the corporate world, it had to be for Bitcoin, right? That was going to be the only reason that you go back into the corporate world. Because quite frankly, we were having a lot of fun, on our own out here. So
we are.
I had to find something.
We're.
No. I know we are. Yes. Yeah. Good call. But so when I was looking and when I was talking to all these other companies as well, I needed to find one that was going to be 100% Bitcoin with a management team that's fully on board with all of our future plans here. Because when you get into this space, you hit the gas and you go. And this team here, you go through the internet and you got a lot of things that happen over time, and you got to meet people, talk to them, get to know the team, find out that they're the right type of people that you want to be in business with. And luckily for me, that all aligned, and I found a good landing spot here. So the good news is they're also highly supportive of what we're doing here at True North. So, it's even in my contract. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to keep doing a bunch of killer stuff, and we're going to crush it. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to really enjoy being able to, be inside the Bitcoin industry more, learn how all those inner workings work. And I think it's going to be a blast. So I'm glad that they would have me, and it just made sense, and it was the perfect timing. So we're going to make it happen, and we're going to get going.
Awesome. Congratulations to you, Ben, man. A lot of hard work going. There's a lot of excitement on the horizon with these Bitcoin treasury companies. I mean, so much work has gone into all of those components. So bravo, hats off to you, and good work.
Thank you.
maybe we'll and Ben, since you've been waking up at 4:00 in the morning every like the last couple of mornings in a row, maybe if you want to, is there anything you want to say before you drop off?
No. I was just going to say that, when it comes to this space, and particularly when it comes to everything that we cover, I mean, the pace at which these companies are showing up right now, I got to imagine everyone's picking up on just how many leveraged Bitcoin equities are showing up in the market. I mean, it seems like every time you get back on Twitter, there's a new announcement right now. So it is just absolutely incredible where we're at in this cycle. And it's shocking to me that Bitcoin's still below 100,000, but at this pace, that is not going to last long. So it's going to be exciting, and we're going to have a ton of stuff to cover here for the rest of the year.
Couldn't have said it better. Yeah, absolutely right. All right. Well, no need to stay on. We've got a big week next week with MSTR World, and I know you probably have to prepare for your keynote. So feel free to pop
I do.
Yeah.
And I've been burning it at both ends here. So this is one of those few nights where I'm not going to dwell in the darkness too long, and I'm going to go get to bed. So
there you go.
Hope you guys have a good show. I'll talk to you all later.
All right.
Thanks, Ben.
Appreciate it.
Man.
Thanks, Ben. See ya.
All right. Beautiful. And before we get into MSTR stats, maybe we'll kick it over to Grain and do an update on True North World and what we've got on the horizon there. And then I'll jump into the website and we'll go through what we got going on that front.
Sure. So can you folks hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. So MSTR True North in Orlando is going full speed ahead. Looking forward to meeting everybody. Please check the agenda. You do have to check in order to get your wristband. So everybody needs to check in, whether you're an attendee or a VIP. So please come and check in. The room is listed. And then from there, we have a full set of content. We're going to start on time. It's going to go from 12 to 4. We've been working on that. You do have to have a strategy pass in order to go to the strategy party, which will be first. And then our party, that'll be from 5 to 7. And our party is from 7 to 9. I would say that our conference is business casual, and the party, which will be outdoors at the Aquamarine pool and bar, it's in Florida. So we're probably wearing shorts, right? Everybody wearing shorts?
Absolutely. Casual for the party in the evening. Definitely wearing shorts. Grain, you've got to wear Bermuda shorts with the Bermuda socks. That's the only thing I'll accept from you. Then we can
Okay, I'll go shopping for that this week while I'm here.
All right. Excellent. Thanks for the update on that, Grain. And maybe I'll do a quick shout out to our sponsors. We had quite a few sponsors come through the door and help support us for our inaugural event. So big shout out to all the people that are helping support where we're going with MSTR True North. I think we've got a really bright future ahead of us. So shout out to UTXO, Swan Bitcoin, Deloitte, yes, the Deloitte, Perkins Coie, Strive Asset Management, Anchor Watch, Arch Lending, Next Layer Capital, StrategyTracker.com, Zonaris, Medici Roasting, which is a coffee company, Tax Alchemy, Lightwheel Recruitment Advisors, Jackson Control, and Resilier Health. And we've got about 5 others as well that haven't sent in their logos yet. So please send in your logos if you're watching this. Appreciate the support. Thanks for helping us get off the ground. And a lot of excitement on the horizon. And, while we're on this front, we do have Medici Roasting. We have a partnership with Medici Roasting, and you can now get True North Blend Coffee, our official caffeine sponsor of MSTR True North. So you can hop in and get some freshly roasted coffee from Medici Roasting, which is down in Austin, Texas, which I think is quite fitting within the ethos of MSTR True North. We've got, we're not sponsoring like some energy drink. It's, high-end specialty coffee roasting. So,
hey, Jeff, I'm going to chime in real quick. I actually went and ordered my first coffee today. So I actually paid for it and did it. The integration that Cholstein did was great. It worked really super slick to order it and get it shipped to the house. So I'm looking forward to getting it. It was really a great integration.
Yeah, easy stuff. Easy stuff. And we got some sponsors on the horizon, which is so fun. I mean, it's just a group of guys getting together. This started in October, and now we're on episode 25. We just keep it rolling, and we're going to be on stage with the MSTR, the strategy team, next week, and we've got our own programming and our own event, and I think this will be the first of many. So maybe keep an eye out for a future golf tournament, maybe, or some other fun events on the horizon. I think we can swing some cool things.
Fun fact, a lot of local Scottsdale businesses are aware of what I do in True North, and they want to buy the coffee. I've been getting DMs about it today, so it's kind of funny that it's kind of taken off like that. So we'll see what happens with that. This is all just kind of nuts the way it's been going, so I'm really excited for everything.
Yeah.
Let's go. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, the programming is going to be fun too. I mean, we've got an hour of keynote speeches. We've got some presentations on options and derivatives and volatility. We've got an Ask Me Anything session. And then there's also going to be a panel. We're effectively doing like a 4-hour live True North session in Orlando. And you could hang out and meet and hang out with us afterwards, network, and grab a drink at the party. So I think we'll have some special guests and a lot of people. I think a lot of people will be recognizable in the audience. So yeah, a lot of fun. Cool. Anybody else have anything else to add on Strategy World before I shift gears into some statistics, the nerdy stuff?
Maybe I'll just mention 10 a.m. Monday morning. If somebody wants to arrive at 10 a.m., that's when registration starts. So that's just a nice opportunity to network and not be worried about, getting there at the last minute. Get there at 10, 10:30, 11. We're going to start at 12 sharp.
Cool.
Yeah, and we won't have like lunch or anything. I think we'll have, there might be some light bites. I think there will be coffee and some drinks and stuff. But I would prepare for, maybe not having food for a decent amount of time. And the programming will start officially at 12 noon. Yep. Cool. All right, let's shift gears.
No.
Yeah, go ahead, Grain.
So Bitcoin Las Vegas 2025, we have a time slot for some of us on May 29th. We also have a 30% off code for people that would like to go there and to also to see us in Las Vegas. So that's a new addition. We'll talk more about this in the next week or so. But if you wanted to go to Las Vegas for the Bitcoin conference, it's on our page already. We'll be presenting on May 29th. We'll put on the actual time slot. Tim, you're speaking. Jeff is speaking also in separate panels. So if you would like to meet us and you can't come to Orlando, I recommend coming to Vegas.
Vegas will be a bit crazy. Yeah, I think that's a much bigger event. I would anticipate probably 40,000 people. I don't know, 20 to 40,000 people, which is a big delta. But it's just going to be a lot of people compared to Strategy World. I think is about maybe 250, and I know our event's got about 150 people. So it's just going to be a completely different vibe. But exciting nonetheless. There's going to be all of the Bitcoin companies there, all of the Bitcoin influencers, the people on X that everybody follows. Like they're all going to be there. I believe the code, Grain, is it MSTR True North, just all caps? Is that it? Our code?
Yes, that's it. And Trollstein just did the post in the chat, so you can see it right there. 30% off, and we look forward to seeing everybody in Las Vegas.
Awesome. Excellent. All right. I think that's enough for housekeeping. Shall we get to nerdy stuff? Yeah.
Let's go.
Cool. All right. Okay, so we've been showing this every single week for a majority of the time here. This is a leverage ratio update. So this is MSTR's financial leverage over time. So this is April 30th, 2025, which is today. So MSTR holds 553,555 Bitcoin. The price when I did this analysis was 94,682 for Bitcoin price. So MSTR is holding $52.4 billion of Bitcoin, $8.2 billion of debt, $1.6 billion of preferred stock. So the net capital held on balance sheet is $42.5 billion. I think this would be somewhere around the 250th largest company if we just took the net capital that they held on balance sheet. That would be around the 250th largest company in the U.S. Total liability asset, so leverage ratio is 18.9%. And the Bitcoin price needed for the assets to be less than the liabilities is 14,857. So low leverage, right? Continues to be low leverage. And some interesting statistics over here on the right, this column AS here. So the percent change to year end 2024. So since the year ended 2024, the Bitcoin held on balance sheet has increased 24%. So we've gone from 446,000 to 553,000. So we've increased, or MSTR has increased their Bitcoin held by over 110,000 Bitcoin, and the assets have increased 26%. So we've gone from 41.7 billion to 52.4 billion of assets held on balance sheet. while the debt has only increased 9%. So you can see that there's efficiency here, right? The assets are increasing while the debt is increasing at a slower pace. So
So Jeff, yeah, can I chime in on that point?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what's interesting for this for me, looking at the chart here, you can see on January 1st of 2024, 189,000 Bitcoin. And then you have, as of now, and then 1 year later, it more than doubled to 446,000. And now it's 553,000. What I'm looking at as an investor is in this cycle that's happening, when the price runs up, if we look at the price multiple of the 50-day moving average, and we know that it was 2.37 in the first part of 2024, and then now in Q4, it only went to 2.15 times the 50-day moving average. What I'm looking for is to see if diminishing returns set in. If that price goes above 2.5 or 3 times the 50-day moving average, what happens is because there's more Bitcoin on the balance sheet and more Bitcoin per share, it has more of the volatile asset. So in theory, it should drive the price higher because there's more Bitcoin. But if that multiple goes lower and the 50-day moving average right now is 300, then 2 times that only gets to a price of 600. And I had already posted about this earlier today. So if it goes to 3 times the 50-day moving average, it goes up a little bit. It goes a little bit above $900 for that price. And the question I get from people is, well, what date is that? I don't know what the date is. We'll have to see what happens. But for anybody that buys options, they have to pick an expiration date. So that's what I'm looking at is what's the multiple of the 50-day moving average. But that's indicative of what Jeff did in this chart right here is that in theory, it should go higher because there's more Bitcoin on the balance sheet.
Grant,
Anybody can chime in.
I think you make a good point, Grant, and it's something that's really interesting. Like, had you told us on the 1st of January 2024 that the Bitcoin would have more than doubled in a year, you would have said no way, right? At that point in our investing history in MSTR, I was very, very new, so I can't speak to it that well. But you would have already thought, oh, like diminishing BTC yield and acquisition is setting in. They won't reach 300K Bitcoins for another couple years, right? That was what I was telling myself at that time. Now looking back, that seems complete nonsense, right? They've been able to scale their Bitcoin acquisition in a way that we hadn't thought possible, which will have a delayed impact on the Bitcoin price, and we'll see that moving forward. Now, looking forward, I have a mental block that says Strategy won't get to more than 1 million Bitcoin. For some reason, I catch myself saying that in my head. That seems ridiculous. But let's look back a year at 189, K Bitcoins. You wouldn't have believed they would have gotten to 500,000 in a mere year time. So I think that same sort of unit bias, you could call it, applies here. And we really need to look at the activities they're doing and the demand in the bond market for Strategy preferreds and Strategy equity. And as long as that demand's there, the one thing you can't bet on is some sort of cap to the number of Bitcoin they own. If something's going to give, and that's the Bitcoin price or the demand for their products. Right now, Strike is only ramping up its ATM. I mean, Sailor's slamming the ATM right now, and the price of the equity is going up. So there's demand. It's just going to be crazy to see what happens here with Bitcoin rallying.
Yeah,
Dan, just to
go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. Quick thing. Just to put in some context, January 1st, 2024, the popular narrative going around was that the ETFs were going to make MicroStrategy now obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
Obsolete. Yeah. And the market actually, for a brief time, it went under 1 MNAV, right? So it traded at a discount because of this narrative. So I think you're exactly right that time and time again throughout this entire trade, people's expectations of what is going to happen in the future have just been absolutely crushed. It's defied all expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Dan, to your point, I think unit bias is a good term, but I think perhaps maybe scale bias is more appropriate.
Yeah.
Because, looking back on it, you're right. We wouldn't have thought that they would have hit over 500,000 Bitcoin by now, right? Because it just seems kind of ridiculous. But the reason why I'm using scale bias is because, kind of like to my point about, I think Saylor's trying to scale this thing until it becomes systemically important. What he wants to do is he wants to get so much Bitcoin on the balance sheet that when something gives, like you just said, either the demand for their product or the price in Bitcoin, I personally think it's going to be the price in Bitcoin before it's the demand in their products. They have so much Bitcoin on their balance sheet that they now, I don't want to say overnight, but they in the span of 18 to 24 months could become a major player on the stock market in a way that we can't even conceive of now. And I'm not just talking about like open interest and things like that, right? I'm talking about when they cross $1 trillion market cap, that's going to fuck with people's minds.
Yeah.
For
How
sure.
it went
For sure.
from August 2020 being what was it, Jeff? 600 million in cash, or 600 million, or and $1 billion market cap. 600
Yeah,
million
yeah.
market cap about
Yeah.
to $1 trillion. That's 1,000x. When that moment happens, it's really going to fuck with people's minds. And I think that at that point, it only becomes bigger, because when Nvidia hit $1 billion market cap, when Tesla touched $1 trillion market cap, when Meta and all these companies started touching $1 trillion market cap, people thought that they were just going to slam down, but in reality, they just got bigger, right? So strategy is only going to get bigger.
And you have this like passive flow, the architecture of the market. This has been part of my thesis from the very beginning. Like you have this passive flow that just continues to push it higher and higher. And I think that was shown really well today when you look at Microsoft, right? Microsoft had earnings today and they beat earnings by 7%. And the stock went up $252 billion in market cap. That's 2.5 strategies. And on an earnings beat by 7%. And that's just like this nominal bias. Like once these companies get large enough where they're kind of stuck at the top because they have these huge moats, which strategy is building around itself right now. It stays up there because of the way that the equity market is designed.
And strategy's moat is completely unique, and no one's going to catch them, as we've discussed. But it's not as if they have a moat based on, in the case of NVIDIA, they've got the GPU moat, they've got the first movers advantage when it comes to a lot of their AI development. Tesla has a lead with a lot of different things. Microsoft has a lead with other things. Strategy's moat is a little bit different because it's going to be the base layer for finance or a new financial system. And that's not something you can easily quantify, right? There's so many different products that can exist on top of that putting a number on it, I think, is premature. And we're really only going to see the impact of this when I personally think we're going to have certain inflection points. We already had Bitcoin over 100K. I think when Bitcoin goes to 250, 500K, then eventually 1 million one day, it's going to be a really disruptive event in terms of what the impact strategy is going to have in the market. Because if we just project forward, I mean, I said they're going to have like 600 or 650, whatever I said. They can be at 800K in the next 2 years at this pace. They could be at 800K in the next 3 years at this pace. It's wild to think about when you put that into perspective, and then you put it in perspective what Bitcoin can be at, what their market cap can be at, and just how much interest there is going to be in the stock. This is only the beginning right now.
I agree. And I think it serves to illustrate an interesting point. And to what Ben said at the beginning of the stream, there's all these companies announcing leveraged Bitcoin equity strategies, right? And everyone watching the show, me, Mason, Grange, Jeff, Tim, Adrian, we're going to have to make the decision. Do you sell strategy and do you buy the other Bitcoin treasury company? Do you add to your stack, buy the other Bitcoin treasury company? Do you buy the other Bitcoin treasury company instead of buying more strategy? What do you do? How do you navigate this market? And so people are going to have to answer this for themselves. Like, do I want to bet on a less trustworthy company with more potential of BTC yield in the near term and hope that goes well, they execute properly? Or will I bet on strategy because they have a proven aggressive Bitcoin acquisition strategy? And maybe, you're being, again, scale biased by buying these smaller caps. So everyone's gonna have to decide that for themselves. And I think it's gonna be like the hardest question we all as investors are gonna have to ask ourselves as more of this stuff comes out.
You know what's hilarious? If you would have told anyone a year ago that strategy was the conservative bet, like that narrative would just be like people would laugh at you, right? And now we're sitting here talking, well, strategy is the conservative bet, right? Like it's the conservative bet. But I mean, your point outlines a very, and we'll get into it later. We'll talk about this risk return framework, but I think you nailed it, right? Like every one of these companies is going to operate under a different framework in order to accumulate future Bitcoin. and it may have different risk associated with it, different leverage ratios, different ways of achieving capital, whether doing acquisitions or doing things differently. And that's everybody's going to have to, try to figure out and wrap your head around, like, how do I put this risk return framework into work for my entire portfolio.
And Jeff, we talked about this. Jeff, we talked about this the other day, and it's this idea that Bitcoin's a permissionless, decentralized network. It doesn't require trust. Traditional finance, equities, any of this is all based on trust. We trust that the executive team at Strategy, we're investing in them to continue executing on this playbook, right? The trust is inherent. And so that's something Bitcoiners aren't used to, and they're going to have to start looking at when evaluating these sorts of companies. And some may not trust the entire system, cold storage Bitcoin all the way, right? So that's the game.
Yep.
One of the things that I've seen, and last week when we were all, and we'll talk about what happened last week at Bitwise, but in August of this year, Saylor will have been doing this now for 5 years. And so when you have a new company, 21, that comes out, or all the other Bitcoin treasury companies, I hope that they are very, very successful. But what you're betting on is that this is the catch. Is Saylor's track record in a 5-year head start and 553,000 Bitcoins, right? That's his head start and his track record. A new company comes in, 30,000 Bitcoins, right? They have to more than almost 20x what they have, right, in order to get there. And think about it. If Strategy slows down, which I don't think they are, as the more they begin to buy more Bitcoins and the price goes up, it becomes harder for them to acquire more coins. That's the problem, is that the competitors, as the price goes up, it makes it more difficult for them to acquire more. And you're betting against, do the competitors have a greater percentage change in their spot price versus Strategy? But Strategy's got a 5-year lead and a 5-year relationship with all the investors that they go to for the converts. So I think that's the comparison right there. And if you have large positions and you like to trade like I do, then from that perspective, I need the liquidity from a bigger player. The smaller ones are interesting, and I hope they're successful. But for me, I'm more inclined to continuing with the larger players, even though I may have some small positions in the smaller ones.
I think
Well, I think what's probably going to
Get Adrian in there. Adrian, you've been holding it. Go for it.
Yeah. I think what's the most likely outcome is that this is going to be a decision around the new portfolio, the new 60/40, right? Instead of us thinking in terms of what is the best bet, we could be thinking in terms of, for leveraged Bitcoin equities, we would have a portfolio allocation, and maybe Strategy is just our largest allocation. And then we have a little bit of Semler, a little bit of GME, a little bit of Metaplanet, whatever. And this is not me endorsing anything. This is just me saying that's kind of what could happen.
This is not financial advice.
Yeah, this is not financial advice. I see this being the basis for a new understanding of portfolio management. You're going to have the leveraged Bitcoin equities. You're going to have the Bitcoin plays, and people are going to have an entire portfolio dedicated just to that. Just like Bitcoiners have their Bitcoin in cold storage, I can see people kind of partitioning or having that kind of compartmentalization of their understanding of what equity should be, and leveraged Bitcoin equities would exist in their own universe, in their own category as this thing scales, which is why what Grain has been saying, what Dan's been saying, what you've been saying, when this becomes systemically important, the moat that Strategy has is not going to be overcome. Even if they stopped today and didn't buy Bitcoin for another 5-10 years, I would be shocked if anyone caught them besides like a Mag 7 company. And that would take a Mag 7 company going like balls deep in it, right? And just saying, fuck everything else. We're only going to go with a Bitcoin strategy right now. We're going to try to beat Strategy with regards to the amount of Bitcoin they have in a balance sheet. I just don't see that happening. So their lead right now, in my mind, gives them the biggest moat. It gives them almost, I don't want to say an insurmountable moat, but kind of. And I think that we will be assessing the other plays as part of a larger leveraged Bitcoin equity portfolio.
I want to add something. So from an institutional standpoint, Strategy is the biggest, has the most liquidity, but it's also, and it's going back to what Grain said, it's the most trustworthy. That's the moat that it has right now, is the switching cost, right? It has a 5-year head start, a 5-year reputation of doing what it said it's going to do. We are going to buy Bitcoin and increase Bitcoin per share, right? And we had some conversations with Saylor at the conference, and it was very apparent that he wants to be a trustworthy partner to everyone in the ecosystem around strategy, all the derivatives. If you're buying the convertible debt, if you're buying the preferreds, all of it, he wants you to know that he can be trusted. And from an investing standpoint, and I think like the best example of this recently is GME, right? Imagine if you just YOLO'd your entire strategy bag into GME. Maybe they're going to buy Bitcoin, right? But if you did it like initially off of the rip, off the announcement, well, you'd be standing here, you'd be like, where's the Bitcoin? Where's the Bitcoin? Whereas with Saylor, if they're doing convertible debt, next day, you know that they're buying the Bitcoin and it's added to the balance sheet. And that's the trust that can't just be fabricated overnight.
Yeah,
That's
if you're if you want to issue $1 trillion of debt, right? We throw around big numbers all the time, but really sit back and think about $1 trillion, right? $1 trillion is 1,000 billions, right?
Jeff,
if you want
have you ever seen the visual of $1 trillion?
Oh yeah, it's just like
it's
you
like
just
a
keep
football.
scrolling on the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. $1 trillion is just an absolute shitload of capital, right? And if you want to issue $1 trillion and you actually think you can do it, you have to be the most trustworthy party in the entire market. People have to trust you more than they're trusting, other counterparties like the U.S. government, right? Like you have to be as trustworthy as the existing sources for the least risky debt on the planet, like that. And maybe it's time to work our way into what we saw at the Bitwise event, because I think this is getting us directionally there.
That was a good segue.
Really good segue. Yeah. Maybe Dan, we'll kick it over to you and just any background or insight on the Bitwise event, and maybe we'll just pass it around real quick and just kind of jump into it.
Yeah, I'll give my 30 seconds here. I think the thing that hit everyone was Saylor's speech was fantastic the entire way through. And then you had these 2 slides at the end that talked about the creditworthiness of strategy and how over collateralized all of their preferreds and convertible debt are. And he gave certain multiple figures. It's like, so it ranged from the preferreds, the Strife was over collateralized by 44 times the outstanding. And then it ranged all the way to 10x the convertible debt is collateralized by their Bitcoin stack. And then based on their position in the capital structure. So those aren't the exact numbers, but the point being is he had a really good framework to explain to big institutional players how they should be valuing the debt and how safe it is. And the point he brought up was that the debt itself and the preferred stock is trading like a distressed emerging markets bond and preferred shares, which are essentially a perpetual bond, just because of how high the yield is compared to the yield of a risk-free U.S. Treasury. So again, the yield's so high on strategies, convertible debt and preferred stock. So preferred stock being the bonds, convertible debt's different. That it's trading like distressed, high risk emerging markets debt. And that's really important, I think, if you're a fixed income investor, there's massive opportunity there if you recognize how credit worthy strategy is based on a Bitcoin framework.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat this very simply. Strike and Strife are incredibly undervalued if you think that strategy is not risky, or if you have an understanding of their leverage ratio and how they manage their business. And I put together just a quick and dirty on this, and I tried to make it as simple as possible. So I pulled the risk-free rate, right? So this is the 10-year treasury as of today was 4.19%. Strife, the perpetual Strife, which is basically MicroStrategy debt, has a yield of 10.91% today. The spread on the risk-free rate is 672 basis points. And I know Saylor did this a different way, so this is just a basic framework here. So the spread on that, so you could say the excess risk over and above the risk-free rate is 672 basis points. Now you look at what else is in the market, right? So you've got Boeing preferred stock is paying a yield of 4.76, so it's got a 57 basis point spread. AT&T is at 6%, so you got 181 basis points. And you've got PG&E, and this is the one that really slapped me over the head was PG&E because so PG&E pays a 6.86% yield, so a 267 basis point spread. All right, for those that don't know, PG&E provides electricity for 2/3 of California. Okay, absolutely enormous utility provider. They in 2018 they were deemed liable for the Paradise wildfire event, which was a $12 billion loss on the entire industry. And I think PG&E paid claims of roughly PG&E was deemed liable for the event, so they had faulty wires, faulty infrastructure. I think they paid $12 billion, or no, they paid around $4 billion of loss in that event out to insurance companies that paid out all of these claims. So PG&E has about a $36 billion market cap, and they've got just an enormous risk profile, right? Like they were deemed liable for this event in California. The way the law is written in California, like inverse condemnation, basically utility companies are liable for damn near everything. So when you compare just the general risk profile here to a company that's got Digital Capital, managing a leverage ratio with a 20% leverage ratio, compared to PG&E in California, which is incredibly risky. They can't even get reinsurance on their portfolio because they are so risky. Like there's not a single reinsurance market that's out there that will provide reinsurance capital for them. And so it's relied on the California state government in order to create this backstop that sits behind PG&E in case of a wildfire event. So you think about the risk framework here. And when I compare the two, just PG&E to Strife, I look at Strife as incredibly undervalued. So you're getting just the relative marginal risk that you're getting for the product relative to these alternative products that are in the market is just so wildly underpriced. Basically, the yield's way too high. And I think Saylor he's just like trying to pound the table, like that, tell all these people at these rating agencies, hey, this isn't that risky. And I think they're really struggling to comprehend the risk profile of these types of products. So, a lot of evolution happening in this space, and it'll be really interesting to follow.
Jeff, can I offer an idea for some people? So I think there's a Bitcoin maxi sort of ideology that since Strategy doesn't provide proof of reserves for their Bitcoin, then you can't be sure. And so it doesn't feel as risk off as it may sound, which I'm not of that belief, but there was an interesting post, and I forget who, I think it was Joe Burnett. He said, if you're worried about Strategy not having the Bitcoin, what you can do is you can buy the Strife preferred stock and then buy a 1-year put option at like $50 a share for Class A. It costs nothing. Yeah. So in the case that Strategy doesn't own any Bitcoin, right? You are completely collateralized, like you're completely protected because the Class A shares would be worthless. So you can get this, like, it's so crazy how you can get that sort of protected yield in that manner. I think it's kind of a cool way to do it.
That's a really interesting thought. Yeah, because your put option that you buy is effectively insurance to the downside. You can lock in a 200 basis point, probably 500 basis point credit spread if you bought a put and held Strife.
The put costs like 1%. Yeah. So you're getting a 10% yield instead of an 11% yield, effectively.
With insurance.
Yeah, it's insane.
With insurance that if they didn't actually have the Bitcoin, which that's wild.
It's insane. Yeah.
I'll go back to what Saylor says all the time. If you have land and you build a building in Manhattan, and he talked about that, whatever it was 5-6 months ago with the New Zealand person, that interview, I always forget her name. And what he said is that when he gets the money, he deploys it. If you're going to go build something, right? If PG wants to go do upgrades, or any of these companies, or Boeing wants to go build more planes, it takes physical infrastructure to go do that. By the time they build a new factory or a plant and hire people, that could be 1, 2, 3, 4 years out there. And if you have a real estate person that wants to go do a building and you give them $1 billion, it takes them 3 years to build it. Saylor can deploy this in 1 week $1 billion into cyberspace, deploy it and buy the Bitcoin. And Bitcoin trades 24/7. It doesn't get depreciated. It doesn't need to have maintenance on it. It doesn't need a new roof or a new factory or whatever. And then the storage costs are virtually zero. So from that perspective is eventually these companies will wake up to this. And these credit spreads that you're seeing here, it's like, why would I do this if I could just buy the strategy stock, and then what I can do is I could sell it anytime I want to. If I don't like it, then I sell it. I'm not tied into it just by owning Strike and Strife. And I think that part is that's really interesting for the folks that own that, for the companies that own that. They don't have to wait a 5-year term. They could just do it for a year or two and like, oh, we got these great returns on it. Now we're going to sell it. That would probably trigger a taxable event, not giving financial advice for those companies, but they could hold it long term. And I think that's why he built them.
Completely. That's a good
Right.
point. Man. The liquidity of those products is incredible. And that's what he talked to us about a bit at strategy or at the New York conference, was that these are fully liquid. It only ups the efficiency of the converts, right? There's a slight bit of inefficiency with the converts because they're private placement. Now you've got these fully liquid convertible notes that pay a coupon to fixed income investors. Like, that is incredible. It's that much more efficient.
Yeah, your algos get that much more efficient too. They just have more places that they can trade and move it, and it's just another product with like another future deep pool of liquidity.
It's so funny. Where are the algos now, right? Look at this. This is an arbitrage, guys.
This is an
buy
arbitrage.
You buy Strife, and then you buy the floor put option. I mean, just do that. Like, you just do that. I wouldn't tell someone to YOLO all into MicroStrategy necessarily. I'd tell them to YOLO all into Strife and then buy the put, buy the deepest out of the money put. There you go. There's your 10%.
You're locking it in. Yeah.
Yes,
And then
so
go ahead, Grain.
Yeah, so I'm happy that you built this chart. I think this is great. Just to give the folks, people on the call, context for what's happening is that at the Bitwise event, it was approximately 5 hours. Saylor did a great masterclass on his presentation. Everybody should watch that. I think he had new content. The end of it was great, where he talked about these credit spreads, and I think that's what we're talking about right now. But what happened was, and I can't stress enough, this is advice. If this is your biggest investment that you have, or you have a decent amount of money in this, you should go to an event and you should go meet Michael Saylor. I highly recommend that. He is a very outgoing person. You can meet him. That is possible. We had about 30 minutes with him after this, and we talked about this in detail. And there was, initially it started, there was 3 people. Jeff and I were there and a couple other friends. And then after a few minutes, the crowd formed, and we talked about this in great detail. And this is a very esoteric area to talk about, but he was very specific about what he thought was going on in this marketplace. And so my takeaway for that is that if you have not been to an event where Michael Saylor is, my recommendation is to go to that event and then to go introduce yourself and meet the person. I think you get a much different experience doing something in person than online. So that's my recommendation. And yes, by the way, the person said that was my bedtime reminder. So it is. Well, I am on the East Coast. It is 10:45 p.m. for me.
I love it. Some of the commentary in the X community right now is like, where's the demand for the converts, or like, why hasn't he issued more converts? And I think, after speaking with him, that there's a lot of focus on Strife and Strike because they're kick-ass products. Like, everybody should be eating these up. And I think there's a decent amount of energy being pushed towards the marketing of these products and the understanding of these products, right? They're a little bit foreign, right? We're talking about them all the time. And Dan, I mean, just last week or 2 weeks ago, you had your like aha moment on Strike, right? And now you've been obsessed with it. And like, when was it launched? In February? Right?
Yeah, it took me a while.
So
I only think about this stuff.
And you're thinking about the stock like 24/7 all the time. And now, in order to get the rest of the world's mind around this, the other different capital pools, you gotta go, market the product, get out there, talk about what's going on, and a podcast like this, other people talking about it in traditional financial framework. It just takes some time, and I think there's desire to push more capital into Strike as a convertible bond option, because it is this fully liquid product, and it is a convertible bond. It's just in a different wrapper, fully liquid wrapper.
I think one thing that's interesting is like you could, in theory, convert ARB hedge strike, but I don't think it's trading that way right now because of the yield. That's the thing, is the yield so high relative to the value of strike. You can't take the bond, you can't take the preferred and then do your
Good point.
delta hedging on it.
Right.
So
because it's not moving that. It's not moving.
it's not
that hard.
moving. Right.
Yeah.
Once it's real high, right? Once strategy's at 1,000 plus a share and that yield is 2%, then you can go nuts with delta hedging and have no time decay. Not that the converts really have that much time decay, but regardless, I think it'll be more like a convert as the price of Class A starts to go higher, and we'll see more of that convert ARB market move into the preferred market.
Oh yeah.
But until then, I think there's some converts hopefully in the works, or
Yeah, it's like that image, Dan. I think you had it. Maybe you're showing it next week at our conference. But that image where you look at the convertible bond pricing curve relative to like where it converts into equity, and once it starts moving, then it's like that's where a lot of the delta hedging can happen. But like when it's super low, it's the yield product. It's like the yield product hedge downside.
exactly.
But
And
the
the converts have zero yield too, right? Which adds to its, like, it will start moving even quicker than the preferred. Yeah.
right. And the existing convertible bonds that have a 0% yield are moving more just because
Exactly.
they're just way more sensitive to the equity.
Right.
Okay.
And the strike is so close, right? They're only 50% out of the money.
Right.
Some of them are more or less now, but they're only set 50% out of the money. Whereas these things are whatever, 300% out of the money as of now.
Yeah. Way out of the money.
Interesting though, like if there was an options market on strike, I mean, you'd be buying calls, right? Because as those things move into the money, the volatility is just going to go nuts. It's going to move like equity as it gets there.
There we go. I went call options on strike. An option on the option.
Yeah.
It's the third derivative.
Third derivative.
You know, speaking about that, the market has matured systemically since fourth quarter. There were no options even on IBIT until November 20th. And so what's happened is as Strike and Strife came out and the market, he acquired a lot more Bitcoin in the balance sheet. There's a lot of other products that came out. Misty had already been available. IMST with Bitwise was just launched approximately, I guess, about a month ago. And so what now happens is that you have your choice. And Saylor always puts up that chart about how do you refine oil. It comes out of the ground. You make all these different products out of it. And that's what he's been talking about for maybe 6 months. I don't know when he originally showed that slide, or maybe he showed it a year ago. And now as the market has matured, they have all these different products with different risk profiles and different return profiles, whether it just pays a fixed coupon on it, or it's the strategy stock that just goes up and down, has more volatility. You have all these different choices. So again, not financial advice. I think about this. I like strategy stock, and if it's volatile, I want more strategy stock. I want options on it. If the market goes sideways, now I have the option to go into something like IMST with Bitwise, because then it will probably pay its dividend payment, or Strike or Strife. And then when the market runs up, switch back and forth. So now I have something what I call the trading pair between these two things, and I'm able to switch back and forth between them. That's something that I look at, and that was not available 6 months ago. The market has matured significantly. So that's the difference that I see, and that takes time for this to all get built. So I think we're heading in the right direction.
And to that point, like, can you imagine? I know Jeff and Mason, you guys have been talking about MetaPlanet a lot recently, or in the past couple of days. I mean, I don't have enough time to follow all this stuff and think about all the different products you can create in your portfolio, whether it be hedging Strife with puts, buying calls on MSTR, buying calls on that's a full-time gig just looking at MSTR's derivatives. And Adrian, to your point, this is an ecosystem, right? Like if a group of analysts can full-time and not have enough time to focus on just MSTR's related products, right? On strategies related products. I mean, that in itself is an ecosystem.
Yeah. And how do you expect like a traditional financial analyst to be in front of this stuff? Like they can't, right?
Time is limited.
It just takes too long.
Especially with something like MetaPlanet, which I believe was the best performing stock in the world last year, right? For a traditional Wall Street analyst, wrapping their head around strategy is mind numbing for them. But learning Japanese securities law and all these different securities that Dylan's putting out there, like I don't understand that. I don't have enough time to really look into it. And I was talking to Dylan. I was like, you must have gotten like a PhD in Japanese securities law in like a year, right? He's had to keep up with all of this in the same way that we've had to keep up with all of this. So it kind of reminds me of going back to the Saylor quote of like, focus your energy, right? You only have so much bandwidth. And as this market gets more complicated, as there's more opportunities, more shiny objects, really make sure that you know what you are doing. And you kind of have a fundamental understanding of what's going on in whatever it is you're investing. Not financial advice, but I think that's good life advice.
And the thing with it is that to understand all this, you have to understand Bitcoin first, right? That has a steep learning curve. And then to understand strategy on top of it, there's another steep learning curve. And now you got to throw in Metaplan and Semler and Cooler and all these other and GME and all these other plays. This is very much an ecosystem. This is very much an economy, and it's going to. Some people are going to burn out. Some people are going to find opportunities, but it's going to require an entirely different way of thinking. Because Jeff and Dan were just walking through all the different ways you can play this thing, and I think Saylor's doing that deliberately. He wants to create an economy and an ecosystem that becomes self-sustaining and gives you adversarial and complementary plays that you can do to cover your own losses and to cover your own upside and to make sure that you have as many opportunities as possible to make money, essentially. I think that the more companies that copy that, so if Semler copies it, if GME copies it and tries to do the same thing, it's only going to get more and more confusing for the traditional finance markets as we know it right now. So this is very, very early. I know it sounds corny to say it, but it's very, very early. And when the market cap gets larger and larger and the other players come into the fray, it's only going to grow and it's going to become its own thing. That's an entirely different way of thinking about finance. So, yeah, I think that the future's bright.
Yeah, right. This is the Bitcoin portfolio theory, right? And the fact that Saylor has created these products and the team is managing their leverage ratio very safely provides space for people to live on a Bitcoin standard with these products. And right, that's how you grow the Bitcoin ecosystem, right? Like what I'm doing right now. I'm living on a Bitcoin standard in the Bitcoin equity ecosystem. And if the price moves 100% from here, goes to $600 back to a new all-time high, there's going to be dozens, hundreds of other people that are going to be doing the same thing. And they're going to be focusing their time and their energy on continuing to build the ecosystem. I don't think that's priced in.
Reflexive,
it's
baby.
Reflexive. Like the whole thing's reflexive, right? Because everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, got a brand new car, new house, and whatever it is, and that you start talking to your neighbor, like, well, what do you do? Well, I run a Bitcoin company.
I think,
and we're going to hear more and more stories.
Yeah, it's the thing that a lot of Bitcoiners are missing, and I think we talked about this either last week or the week before. What strategy is doing, what all these other leveraged Bitcoin equities are doing, is creating a market where a lot of players are essentially passive Bitcoin buyers. They're passive Bitcoin investors, and they're living passively on a Bitcoin standard. If you are someone that owns Bitcoin and you own strategy and you're playing options and you're living off of the income, or you're getting Misty and you're living off the dividend or so on and so on and so forth, you are passively living on a Bitcoin standard, whether you realize it or not, because all the volatility is coming from Bitcoin, which is driving the volatility of the stock, which then makes the options market grow, which then makes Misty get more dividend paid, and so on and so on and so forth. I really am looking forward to the day where a lot of the dogmatic opinions about Bitcoin start to advance a little bit, and we realize that the financialization of Bitcoin was not only inevitable, but it's also mutually beneficial. And I think that's what Saylor is doing, and he's effectively snuck into TradFi right now, and I think he's still a little bit under the radar, even though they've gone from 1 billion to 100 billion, right? And it sounds crazy to say that. He's still under the radar right now, and there's still a lot of people that are going to get caught with their pants down with what I like to call the oh shit moment, when this thing becomes so large and they're just like, where did this thing come from? How did we miss it? And it's only going to grow from there as well. And yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there-
I wanted.
ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. So one of the things that happened at the Bitwise event was we met a lot of people there, and it was known that the MSTR True North people were there. And so what happened is I spoke to a couple people, and they're like, "You actually do this full time?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, we're talking 10, 20, 30 hours a week of research. And we are all focused on this particular area. This whole ecosystem comment that we're talking about, Strike, Stripe, the stock itself, the converts. Any traditional analyst will probably be reviewing 10, 20, 30, 40 different stocks. And they don't have that laser focus what's going on. So as Jeff always say, this will be the most hated rally on Wall Street. And for us, it's the most loved rally because we've been tracking this for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, however long you've been in it. And we made these enormous gains and we're helping this whole community. And so I think the craziest thing is that when I continue to talk to people, either the ones that are not in this at all, and they're like, how much time do you spend on this? As much as I can. This is it. This is what's propelled us forward. And I think that's where it is. And I think that if people saw the gains in their own accounts, they would spend also that much time on it. If you can't make, if you don't see the return, you won't do it. So we all put in, as Adrian said, you have to understand Bitcoin first. And once you understand that, you apply to a Bitcoin treasury company. And now we're on the cutting edge of this, of seeing how it happens. So for us, to be honest with you, I'm just waiting for the run up to happen as it's happening right now. I wait. What do? I have to wait. And I'm okay with that.
If you listen closely, there's a sucking sound, and the sucking sound is capital going into Bitcoin, right? It's going into Bitcoin. And how is this happening? Well, slowly at first, and then faster and faster and faster. And Saylor made a great point about we're talking about marketing. I think Justin does some work for us behind the scenes. He manages the chat. Hi, Justin. He asked them, do you have any plans for marketing? And we're at this Bitwise event. It was beautiful, right? There's, free drinks. It was great. It was right on the water. Yeah. Perfect day in front of, 200 Wall Street executives, analysts, people in the broader crypto space, retail people. And Saylor gives this, it was amazing. We were all there. I hope Bitwise posts it because it was an amazing speech, and he hammered it. He murdered it, right? And he has it so concise at this point where it's kind of, you can't dispute it. You can't dispute it. It's like there's Bitcoin, and then there's everything else. And if you're not in Bitcoin, well, good luck. And he radiates confidence because look at what he's done, and he already knows what's going to happen, right? He's like Bitcoin's going to 10 million, right? He's been very open about this. He's telling his secret. He's saying there's more companies doing this. Welcome. You're helping me. You're helping the ecosystem because it's not zero sum, right? And what he specifically said about marketing was, I didn't pay for any of this. I'm here today, right? Yeah. I'm talking to all these big names on Wall Street, and I didn't pay for any of this. This is because of the ecosystem. Bitwise, which has multiple ETFs, IMST, which is, covered calls, and what's their other one? OwnB?
OwnB.
Yeah, which is the larger Bitcoin treasury company ETF. He said, I didn't pay for this. So what's happening here is people, once they join the ecosystem, suddenly have a self-interest, and they're welcoming more people with open arms. And how does this happen? Well, slowly, and then faster and faster and faster as people, oh, you bought the boat, you bought the car, or whatever. It's not even that. It's, oh, you seem relaxed, or you seem happy. Or you seem hopeful, or you're not miserable or nihilistic, right? And it kind of radiates out. So how is this going to happen? Slowly, and then all at once, and it's incredibly reflexive. That's what I keep coming back to, is Bitcoin is this perfectly scarce thing that is entering TradFi, and that's never happened before. This is an event that we are witnessing for the first time, and it's really profound that we get to be here at this moment to see it grow.
I agree,
Well-
and I'd add something. The way I'd say it, he said something very keen in his speech to what you're saying. It's, why are people listening? Why do people let me do this? Why do they create products off my stock? It's because people are making money, right? And he looks at you and he kind of squints. He's like, yeah, it's because people are making money, guys. Like, don't forget that's, he's like, what do these Wall Street guys want? They want to make money. What do the convert arb guys want to do? They want to make money. I mean, you can trust greed. And that's one thing. I think you can kind of trust greed. And he's very clear in that he's creating a trading device, an ecosystem, products that do exactly what his investors are looking for because they want to make money off this thing. And so, like, where are the incentives are aligned? I just think the incentives are aligned. Everyone wants to make money, and I'd want to be in a stock, in an equity where people want to enter it because they believe they can make money.
Well, the thing about it is that not only are the incentives aligned, but I think people miss the point that Bitcoin is actually a very cooperative system. The more people that participate, the more the participants benefit, right? In a fiat-driven mindset, more participants leads to more dilution, which leads to more competition. And I think that's part of the challenge that traditional companies are having, why more people haven't just followed Saylor. Because to us, common sense, we're looking at $1 billion to $100 billion, and we're like, what's the holdup, right? But I think traditional finance is looking at it and still in a very, very competitive stance. They don't want to get into something they can't dominate. They don't want to get into something where they can have a cooperative system that everyone benefits from. Bitcoin goes up, strategy wins. Bitcoin goes up, you win. They don't want that. And I think it's a very, very different kind of thinking. And I also think that that is something that's going to leave a lot of companies in the dust. If they cannot reconcile a new cooperative paradigm and a new cooperative economy and a new cooperative ecosystem, they're going to be very, very swiftly left behind in the fiat world where they're still playing the same games, doing stock buybacks, playing the same kind of leverage arbitrage games that they play without getting on this bandwagon. And to Mason's point, the oh shit moment is going to happen, and then everyone's going to kind of flood it, right? And I think that's when we see scary run-ups in price. And I don't mean like literally scary. What I mean is I envision a year where we see Bitcoin start off with a certain number of zeros and then end that year with 1 or 2 more zeros within the same year. And that becomes a new price point. And then we go from that price point onwards. Because to Mason's point, it's a vacuum cleaner, right? It's sucking in all the capital. Bitcoin can do that by default. It can siphon away capital from all these markets. And if you look at the global market, there's anywhere between 1 and 2 quadrillion. When you look at derivatives, when you look at bonds, when you look at real estate, there's a lot of room to grow.
I think
Right. When
just real quick,
ahead,
last thing to add. In a recent interview, Saylor said, the latest pushback. He said people used to say, "Oh, it won't work." The latest pushback was, "Oh, you've done it too well. You've already won," right? And this is where Bitcoin's an ego test. You have to accept, you have to exactly what you said, Adrian, is you have to accept that joining it or joining it late isn't an indictment of you, right? You're doing it because you're benefiting from it. And that's what's beautiful about it, is that you get to be a part of it and you get to benefit from it. And it's not zero sum.
Every single person who's ever bought Bitcoin has missed the first 100x because it started off at, effectively zero. Like if you take that limit, every single person who's bought Bitcoin has missed the first 100x.
Yeah. The ego test. You have to pass the ego test.
When you look at that realistically, assume that Bitcoin started at $1. I missed the first 2000x, and I've been in it for 8 years. I missed the first, not even at zero. I already missed the first 2000x. So I thought I was late back then. Who knows where this is going to be in 1 or 2 or 3 years down the road. Think about what you just said at the very beginning part of this call. Approximately 190,000 Bitcoins, and now there's 550 in January of 2024, and now we have 500. Strategy has 553,000 Bitcoins on the balance sheet. Where's it going to be in 2 years? If it goes to 1 million Bitcoins, people get gravitated when you switch over from a 6-digit to a 7-digit number. And we saw this in 2017. In 2017, it was, can Bitcoin break $10,000 per coin? It started at 1,000, and eventually it almost hit 20,000 that year. So people attach that number. So I think a 7-digit number for it to switch over, I think that can happen sooner than people think. And once it breaks that barrier, as Dan said about unit bias or scale bias, as Adrian said, once you hit that number, then it's like, oh, I guess it can go bigger. Same thing with a company when it hits $1 trillion market cap. It's got to slow down. Nah, it didn't seem to for the top 3 companies, for Microsoft, Apple, and NVIDIA.
Foot on the gas. Over to you, Tim. You got something?
Yeah, I was listening to Mason talking about that sucking sound, right, of capital out of these pools, these markets.
Tim, you can
going
hear
into
it, right?
Bitcoin. I can hear it, but the sucking sound is not going into GameStop, right? I have a little, I don't know. It just doesn't make me feel great that we keep bringing up this name, that yes, it's a meme stock. Yes, they have made this announcement, but as of public announcements, as of today, they don't have any Bitcoin. So we can stop talking about it. Like, join the ecosystem, right? I just think, I don't know, it doesn't fit the vibe of the messaging in the Bitcoin treasury space. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, everybody that's bought Bitcoin has been super transparent about it, and they're like excited to talk to you about it.
Yeah. So
Right.
I did think it was super cool, and everybody probably knows it because I retweeted it. But Bitwise had a little clip today where they asked Eric Semler, Tom
Yep,
Lee,
saw
Haley
that,
Lennon, and Stephanie Lemmerman, how many companies are going to be on this Bitcoin treasury, this Bitcoin standard, have a Bitcoin treasury strategy. And you know, you can go listen to the clip. That, you know, I think 2 of them said there's going to be thousands, right? Eric Semler was saying thousands, and one of the people said closer to 20%. And I went back to the clip that's literally the kind of like the cover clip for the Treasuries podcast, and I think it was December of last year. I said, and it's still floating out there, right? I think at least 1 out of every 10 companies. Now, I don't know. Nobody knows the future, but that was kind of my guess when I started that project. And I just think it's really interesting that now you have arguably the most knowledgeable people in the space, right? Semler Scientific, Fundstrat, Fold, Kraken, saying like it's going to be thousands of companies. It could be closer to 20%. That's super interesting from like December to April. So yeah, I thought that was interesting.
And what are there, like 55,000 companies in America, something like that? Just some like absolutely absurd number. Most of them are private, but
And yeah,
and that's just continuing to evolve.
so it's like, as Saylor says, right now it's on a need to know basis, but in hindsight, it's going to be obvious. I'm super intrigued, whoever wants to take this, but Jeff, like, how did it hit you when you first saw the stat that 55 million retail investors directly or indirectly hold strategy stock, MSTR? I mean, that's a big number.
Well, huge number. Well, it's QQQ, right? I mean, anybody that holds QQQ and some form of QQQ or you know, target date fund that follows QQQ to some regard, like, is how it sneaks in there. And I bet you 80% of them, probably more, 90% of them probably don't even know that they hold it.
Yeah. The other thing that
and it just becomes like more and more popular, right?
Yep. The other thing I think Adrian or someone referenced, maybe Dan did, Jeff, Joe Burnett's one post today. The part that struck me is he was saying what you hear a lot these days, which is corporates, institutional, nation state. But he said, and of course, also still individuals, which brings me to my vacay treasury company in the wild story. So I snuck away literally the morning after the Bitwise event to Turks. Hadn't been there before. Super cool place. If you ever want to go on vacation and not have anyone else at the pool, do it 2 weeks after spring break. So we got lucky with that. But I'm sitting at this restaurant and I say to Elizabeth, hey, that guy over there has a Bitcoin logo on his Yeti tumbler. And I said, don't worry, I'm not going to say anything. You guys know that's false. So they get up to leave, and the guy's walking towards me to walk past me. I go, hey, I really like that Bitcoin logo. He goes, if you know, you know. And I said, I don't know what I said to him, but like his wife said to my girlfriend, she goes, we got a business, and she goes, we've got a podcast. And
That's funny.
I said, I looked at him, and he's kind of anonymous, right? So I don't want to say too much, but I said, can I ask you a personal question? He said, sure. I said, do you have any Bitcoin in your corporate treasury? He said, oh, I mean, almost entirely. I was like, all right, well, here's my info if you ever want to chat. So like the individuals are still out there, right? All these anons just lurking, just stacking. So I just wanted to highlight that for a second.
It's happening behind closed doors, right? All these Saylor interviews are not going on deaf ears. People are taking action. Yeah. Exciting times. Shall we get into earnings, or just talk about what the prep for earnings?
Can I just say one last thing about the Bitwise event? Sure. It was just for me, that was kind of the first event that I've been to since True North, right? Since True North has only been around since September, October, and it was just incredible to have the retail people there come up and say hi, and it felt really powerful to me that we're affecting change and people are listening to us. And I just want to say thank you to the people that came up and said hi. It was really, really cool, and made me feel really motivated and enthusiastic about continuing this and continuing doing work and continuing educating and spreading the word about Bitcoin strategy and Bitcoin treasury companies.
Mason's just flexing that he's a rock star now.
I'm not.
He's like, people recognize me. He's like,
yeah, it was weird, but yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. And big shout out to Bitwise for hosting the event and inviting us out there. I mean, it was an incredible event, and shout out to everybody that came up and said hi. Yeah, we love having conversations, and it's great to meet people in the small environment like that. Good point. Shift to earnings. Earnings is tomorrow. And where should we start? So throughout Q1, Strategy had MSTR will be adopting FASB fair value accounting at the end for this Q1 earnings. It will be announced tomorrow at close when they talk about it. Now, with FASB fair value accounting, MSTR has to mark their Bitcoin to market at the end of Q1. So it starts from day one on Q1, so January 1st, and ends March 30th. Yeah, ends March 30th. So any gain or loss during that period is applied to every single Bitcoin that they own. So Bitcoin started the quarter at, I want to say 93,600, and I think it ended the quarter around 83,000, something like that, maybe 84,000. This is right around Josh's prophecy. And so Strategy is going to have or announce around a $5.1 billion net loss on the Bitcoin held on balance sheet. And this will be reflected in a very negative earnings per share. I think it'll be somewhere, I don't know, around between negative $12 and negative $19 per share. There's a little nuance with how tax is accounted for, and the software business and other business stuff that happens in between, but it's likely going to be a very negative number. This is on the back of, adopting FASB fair value accounting. They also had a $12.7 billion gain in 2024 that's being added to retained earnings at the beginning of the period. So this will reflect that MSTR actually had a $12.7 billion gain last year in 2024, but it's going to come out of a very negative earnings here in Q1 2025, which is hilarious because if you look at what the analyst reports estimated earnings per share for Strategy are, they're negative 2 cents per share. That's like analyst consensus. And we're talking about something that might be like negative $15 a share. It's just a complete blowout, right, from what analysts expect to happen, which I think really just emphasizes how far behind some of the traditional financial markets may be on this. I mean, the algos in the system may understand what's going on, but the people that are running the analysis on this stock have no idea what's going on. They have no idea mark to market value. They have no idea the accounting nuance, and there could be there will be significant posts about this tomorrow and Friday. It's probably going to be from Peter Schiff, right? It's going to be from Jason Calacanis. It's going to be from all the typical people, right? Seeking Alpha, probably Citadel are going to come out and say, Strategy had a $5 billion loss. It's the worst company ever. How is it, priced so high? But they actually have no idea that entire loss in Q1 has actually already been made up here in Q2, and the price of Bitcoin's at 95,000, and Strategy's already made money on their Bitcoin held on balance sheet in Q2. So there's this traditional quarter over quarter framework that most of the traditional market operates on, but you've got this new system that's 24/7, 365 with significant volatility. And I think there will be this continued one more quarter of additional bewilderment where there's significant FUD that's going to be thrown at MSTR, which in my opinion, I think is incredibly good, because it's really like pulling the slingshot of where this thing could go back even further. Because at some point, part of my thesis is that there will be this really large earning per share gain in a single quarter, and it's going to surprise so many people. It's going to hit headline news. It's going to be on the news. It's going to be on Bloomberg, right? If for every $10,000 that the price of Bitcoin goes up, Strategy makes $555 million or $5.5 billion. So, right, if the price of Bitcoin goes to 150,000 by the end of Q2, you're looking at a $25 billion gain in a single quarter, which is just an absolutely astronomical number. And I want to put this in perspective, and I've got this sheet here. This is the top 10 publicly traded companies net capital comparison just over this last year, 2024. So I wanted to point out that the 10th largest company in the entire US stock market is Eli Lilly. Eli Lilly has a $778 billion market cap, and they made $13 billion last year over the entire year. That was their net earnings. Strategy made $12.7 billion in 2024. So they're chomping on the heels, right? And you've got Tesla right here. They had a $8 billion earnings last year. So Strategy had a larger earnings than Tesla did last year in 2024. Now, if you're looking at a situation where Bitcoin rips to 150,000 in that scenario, they're going to make $25-30 billion in a single quarter. You're talking about at least a top 10 publicly traded stock, assuming that Bitcoin just continues to move on a positive format into perpetuity. So the relativity here, I think, is incredibly important. And you think about the power of Bitcoin and this being compared to other equities as earnings, right? Like, what is a stock worth? Like, how do you value any stock? Like, is every single marginal dollar of earnings equivalent, right? All of these companies that you see on the screen have different financial structures, right? They have different leverage ratios. You look at Apple, right? Apple's got an 81% leverage ratio. Granted, it's an incredibly stable product, and you've got revenue coming in the door that's very consistent, but they don't have any ability to leverage up their balance sheet anymore. And you look at some of these other companies, and in comparing all of these metrics, right? Strategy looks really powerful and poised for significant amount of growth. You've got a 19% leverage ratio, so you got ability to leverage up. You got a debt coverage ratio, so you can cover your debt by 5 times. It's kind of like the inverse of the leverage ratio. The multiple on net capital held, basically the market is relative to other equities in the market is underpricing their growth potential on their net capital, basically their financial strength. You've got earnings that competes with the top, top 8 to 10 companies in the US stock market, and the revenue per employee just absolutely obliterates every other company in the entire market. And the PE ratio, so the trailing 12-month PE ratio for Strategy is 8. And you look at this relative to the rest of the market, right? The top 10 companies, the average PE ratio is 37. So it really begs the question: is like, what is a stock? How do you value any stock? And what is the price for a marginal dollar of earnings? So it's I think we're going higher, right? That's it.
Jeff, I totally agree. If you look at what you have here, if you look at the number of employees that Strategy has, they have 1,500. I mean, think about how efficient that is versus all the other column N there. The other thing about this is that I just think that they're just not getting it. It's really just that simple. And whatever stats you put here, after a while, they just look at like, yeah, we're not getting it. I don't know how else they could say it. And then the last part is that when you watch news, you'll see this on the news. It's like, oh, housing prices go up. Oh, that's terrible. People can't buy houses. Housing prices go down. Oh, that's terrible because now people are underwater. Their house is now worth less than they bought it. Like, wait a second. Why are both those scenarios, if it goes up or down, the price is bad? So what you're going to hear is the narrative is, Strategy has to take this. It shows this as they mark the Bitcoins, it's going to show this so-called loss, right? Like, that's terrible. But in the quarter where it goes up by $5 billion or $10 billion, they're going to say, oh my God, that's terrible because they're not making that earnings per share income from their operating business. You'll be like, wait a second, the number is negative, it's bad, and if it's positive, it's bad also. You're like, how is that the case? And you'll just always hear them always take the flip side because people love bad news, even if it's not. They always love that negative narrative. And after a while, you're like, I'm just not going to pay attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And where this gets even more reflexive, right, is Strategy qualifies for the S&P 500, right? The S&P 500 is, 10 times larger in terms of assets under, assets that follow the S&P 500 is 10 times larger than QQQ. So we saw what happened in QQQ with the front running and the run up that we saw in November. Strategy raised $17 billion of capital by selling ATM. There's a significant increase of energy that was coming into the Strategy stock. And now we're talking about Strategy potentially getting included in the S&P 500 with a market cap as like one of the top 100 companies. This is a monumental potential inclusion in the S&P 500. Prior to so when Tesla was added to the S&P 500, when they first qualified, they were a $300 billion company. And then when they got added, they were a $600 billion company. So that was like 2 quarters. In 2 quarters, Tesla went from 300 billion to 600 billion from when they first qualified by having positive earnings for 4 quarters in a row to when they were actually added. And then from there, it went from 6 billion to like 1.3 trillion, just an absolute monster tear in a year. And it's largely due to significant front running of the S&P 500. When everybody knows that they qualify for the S&P 500, it gets pretty hard to exclude them from the S&P 500. The narrative continues to build, and they've got to get past the committee. But I think this is a very similar situation where it's going to be really hard to ignore a company that has like a monumental earnings blowout period.
Jeff, can you pull up the chart that you opened the video with?
The trading view?
Trading view.
Yeah. There it is.
Like, very simply put, the S&P 500 needs Strategy more than Strategy needs the S&P 500.
Yeah, absolutely. So what this is showing, and this is year to date. This is MSTR is up 26.7%, and this is Mag 7, Microsoft, Meta, Apple, Google, Amazon, Nvidia, Tesla, all down 5 to 25%. So it's one of these things that S&P 500 needs Strategy. Strategy doesn't need the S&P 500. It's one of the things that it could just continue to run without it. Yep. Well, I think we aimed for an hour and we're sitting in an hour and a half. We should probably say final thoughts and rip out of here. I know we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to prepare for our keynotes and get things going. But no MSTR True North next week. We are obviously going to be at Strategy World. We'll have a lot of content and information to talk about. So we'll catch you back 2 weeks from now for MSTR True North episode 26. And I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. And we will also, in the meantime, at some point, talk about 21, the new entrants in the market. And maybe we should start doing multiple podcasts a week. I mean, it might make sense to do it at some point. I
Let's
don't
get
know.
through next
Who
week.
knows? We'll
Let's
see.
get-
We'll get to,
Yeah,
let's get through next week. We'll get some market feedback and we'll go with that. All right. Final thoughts. Maybe I'll kick it over to you, Adrian. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Pumped for Orlando. I know I said this last week, Jeff, but if I would have never thought that posting a Draymond Green meme would lead to all this when we first started talking about strategy. So seeing where we were and where we are, and thinking about where we can go, I have nothing but excitement. Looking forward to next week. Looking forward to Strategy World. Looking forward to True North World. Debating on what days of the week I'm going to wear orange tie. That's something I got to consider. Don't know if I'm going to wear shorts to the event. I might not. We'll see how it's going to work. But yeah, I think that it's going to be great. I think that the fact that we are just guys that are actual investors. We're not some big hedge fund. We're not some corporate entity that has come into this space and just made a name for themselves. We actually did this organically. Speaks volumes for everything that we've done. So this is really exciting. I'm really looking forward to the event next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Adrian. Over to you, Dan.
Yeah, thanks for supporting us, guys. Looking forward to meeting everyone who shows up next week, and see you all in the future, if not next week at Vegas and some other event in the future.
Bingo. Mason, over to you.
Watch the earnings call tomorrow. I think everyone has
education
gotten
there.
progressively better, and it's kind of like a sailor podcast. So don't miss it. And if you have questions, ask a question on X. Start a dialogue.
And don't.
No, go ahead, Dan.
No, I'm sorry, Mason. I interrupted. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's good. No, I'm excited for Orlando. Final thought, MSTR True North, we'd make a killer basketball team. We have some height, man. We have some height. And I know Grain would be a great coach. He'd be all about fundamentals, right? We'd have maybe.
You'd be drawing up plays.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I'll be on this. I'll be on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Come on, move fast.
I played hockey, so I'm going to be the water boy, but maybe a good 3-on-3 team.
Yeah, we got some height for sure. Over to you, Grain.
Yeah. Look, if somebody would have said to me 6 months ago that this would happen, I would be like, yeah, I guess that's possible. So even for me, as Mason said, also, when you go to these events and meet people firsthand, it's really awesome. I really appreciate that. So I'm looking forward to meeting everybody we're going to get there on Sunday to do setup. So we'll be pretty busy. But from that perspective, I'm looking forward to meeting everybody. We're going to be ready to go first thing on Monday. If you have any questions, just shoot it into Twitter. We'll do the best we can answer that. The people that are there, you will be able to track us down and find us. I will not be wearing a helmet, so you'll have to see if you can, track me down by my voice and hear me speak. But I really can't wait for Monday. I think it's really going to be something special. And we keep on getting, whether it's our sponsors or the attendees that are talking about it. I think it'll be a great event.
Thanks, Grain. Over to you, Tim.
Yeah, I don't think I can say enough how excited I am and all of us are for next week. If you have any doubt in your mind about whether you should wear but come as you are, be comfortable, right? But if you're looking at it from like a professional standpoint, if you're looking to network, if you're looking to really represent yourself the way you want to represent yourself, there's going to be a lot of people in the room that you've probably heard of, and not just like people related to strategy, like people in the industry. There's going to be a lot of industry people there. So I would say, dress to impress, and just dress the way that you would want to represent yourself if you're going to meet the CEO of Bitcoin Inc. or whatever, right? All these people, whoever you think is like someone that you would think is interesting to meet. And please come up and say hi to us, right? We're in this weird position where like, I don't know who Joe is, but like, I want to meet everybody. Like, you guys are the reason that we're doing this. Like, it's about the community. So super excited. And thanks everybody for all the support, sponsors, attendees, everybody in the chat, right? Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. You said it. Everybody's nailed it. And a big shout out to everybody in the community. The world of investing and group think is completely changing in front of our eyes. And this is the future of stock investing. It's going to be decentralized information and education, and we're at the forefront. I think we are materially early here. So. Thank you to all the sponsors. Looking forward to meeting a bunch of people at MSTR True North World and Strategy World, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Don't be shy, and we will see you in a couple weeks. Watch the earnings call tomorrow. A lot of education happens in the earnings calls, and we're watching like Michael Jordan in his prime here, right? This is Saylor at like his total peak, just raising capital. This is a financial icon that everybody's going to look back on. It's like watching Steve Jobs, like at the beginning of his career, just continue to tear it up in the financial market. So thank you, everyone. 32,359 viewers. Whoa. Appreciate the time. And we'll see you in a couple weeks, if not next week. Take it easy.
Bye, guys.